With me in the studio this hour, Dr. Rafael Ben-Levi is a senior fellow at the Misgav Institute. He's also the director of the Churchill program at the Argaman Institute. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Rafael. And sadly, these attacks are all too common here in Israel, but we are getting some details about the attacker. He was from Jenin and he appeared to have been living in Israel illegally. Right.
Well, I think what I would like to emphasize here is the gravity of the events. Today's attack coming on the backdrop, though, of the bus bombing just a few weeks ago.
Right.
Not 2 weeks ago. And we have to understand, even though by some miracle and some attentive citizens, that it was avoided the extent of the damage that could have been caused by last week's bombing, but we really need to understand what could have happened and what could be happening. And it illustrates the necessity of what Israel is doing right now in Judea and Samaria and the IDF's actions there, and just how much it's necessary that they do that. Right now, that is essentially the front lines of the war. We're in a 7-front war. Currently, Judea and Samaria is the major front where the IDF is acting. And I think it also underlines the broader question, or speaks to the broader question of what is the ability of the Palestinian Authority to play its role as the so-called moderate actor that's supposed to be in charge of controlling the regions that are under its control, and itself acting against terrorist attacks that initiate or that are formed or come out of that region, and it seems that they're not doing a great job.
Yeah. And Israel has stepped in. All right, Rafael, for now, thank you very much. Well, Rafael, before we talk about what happens next, it's a pretty low bar, to be sure, but do you think it's some measure of success that Israel managed to get Hamas to drop the degrading handover ceremonies of the last 4 hostages?
I mean, if you can call that a success, given the current situation, I mean, maybe you can call it that. I think it's important to understand where we're going right now. I mean, I think it's a matter of weeks, really. The question of can the phase 1 sort of be extended, the smaller, less for less, and that might work. It might not work. But I think it's very clear that the idea of a phase 2 is essentially Hamas demanding that Israel declare its own loss and allow Hamas to be surrender. Right? That's what it means, to allow Hamas to continue to rule Gaza, to leave all of the territories, to open up the corridor, which is its main path of rearming itself. It's just a total non-starter as far as Israel goes. But I think we need to put it in the broader regional perspective that it would be a loss not just for Israel if that was the outcome of the war, but in the general balance of power, or the different groups vying for power in the Middle East today. You have the Shiite Islamists led by Iran, Sunni Islamists, of which Hamas is a part of, and you have traditionalist Arab monarchies, mainly in the Gulf states, put Jordan and Egypt in that, and Israel. And so even most of the traditionalist Arab monarchies, they do not want to see Hamas to continue to rule Gaza at the end of the day. So do you not have any
faith in those moderate monarchies then to remove Hamas from power? Could Israel not work to get its hostages back and then leave it to the Arab states to remove Hamas?
Oh, that would be great, but I don't see anyone being willing. At the end of the day, someone needs to go in and forcibly remove Hamas. They're not going to just hand over their arms and I don't know, and surrender. It doesn't seem to me likely at all. And therefore, everyone, whether they like it or not, is really counting on Israel to go in and do that work. It's not pretty, and it won't be fun, but it's absolutely necessary. And it's necessary for, again, not just Israel's future, but the future of the entire region. Because if Hamas finishes this war with a victory the way it's demanding, then this will be a windfall for Islamist factions all over the Middle East.
So when you hear about this Egyptian plan that's being put forward and then will be talked about in Cairo next month at the Arab League summit, they're talking about removing Hamas from power, putting in some kind of technocratic government, and that will all be overseen by all of the Arab countries. You don't think it's possible to do that?
Well, what I've read today is that Egypt was somehow let's say, proposing that Hamas be integrated within a broader sort of Palestinian technocratic government that would somehow allow them to moderate them in some sort of way. This is totally preposterous. There's no way that would work. They would even if they were in a minority, they would de facto control, because they are the only armed faction that is capable of control within that. The other factions would not be able to enforce their will on Hamas.
Yes, sorry, go on.
Yeah. Beyond that, on the other hand, are the Saudi and Emirati officials were quoted as saying that they agree with the idea that Hamas cannot be allowed to be in rule there, whatever it is the next day. And what that means to me is that, at least in the near future, there is no alternative to Israeli military rule, Israeli military control of Gaza. And once that's done, because only that will allow us to move beyond Hamas. Once that's done, then we can start talking about what else we can establish, whether it's local governance and autonomy or involvement of various Arab states. I think there's a lot that can then be discussed, but it won't happen as long as the people on that on the TV there are controlling Gaza.
Just real quick, is there a contradiction between defeating Hamas and getting all the hostages home?
Yeah, well, that's a very difficult question, of course. We would like to hope that there isn't, but at some point we must face the fact that there may be. And if that's the case, then obviously Israel needs to do what is in the best interests of the entire country, the future of the country, with all of the difficulties. I hope it won't come to that. I hope there are ways of pressuring Hamas and the rest of the population or the other factions that are holding hostages to somehow move forward and get them out. And I think that's the way that we need to go.
All right, for now. Thank you, Rafael. And Dr. Rafael Ben-Levi is with me in the studio. What are your thoughts when you hear all of that? That's a pretty positive view of what could happen next in Lebanon.
Yeah, and I think we should remember that back in the 1950s, Israel was most optimistic about the potential of establishing peaceful relations with Lebanon, right? Of course, this is when it was first founded as a Christian or multi-religious, moderate democracy, and this is maybe a window of opportunity for that. I would like to again point out that this is, of course, this is one of the main focal point of the broader balance of power that has been affected by Israel's actions over the past 6 months, and particularly since the summer and since the actions in Lebanon, particularly against Hezbollah. Hezbollah and Nasrallah was the fulcrum. It was the keystone of the entire Iranian terror network across the region. And taking that out has led to various effects and secondary effects. Of course, one of them being in Lebanon itself that we were just heard described there. And we also hear within Lebanon itself, it's also important to understand that like Hanin was saying, the civilian aspect to this, because for a long time people used to say about Hezbollah, they said, well, it's not just a terror group, it's also it's actually a political group.
Right, the Europeans famously wouldn't distinguish, they would distinguish between the political arm and the military.
Right, exactly. And in my view, that doesn't make it any better. That just makes it a terror group who has also taken over a large part of the state by also providing the civilians and with some sort of civilian envelope and services. That makes it worse, right? It makes it closer to a Lebanese copy of the Iranian Islamist model.
And Israel has flipped the script on that, you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so that's but it's also not just in Lebanon; it's also Syria. Of course, right? The outcome of Israel's actions of degrading Hezbollah is also led to
of course, and a knock-on effect. And hold fire, because we will get to Syria in just a moment.
Sure.
But for now, thank you, Rafael. And Dr. Rafael Ben-Levi is with me in the studio. So let's talk about President Trump's maximum pressure campaign on Iran. Are you confident that Trump is serious about weakening Iran? Because he has said he would like to have a deal with the Iranians. He prefers that over war. Just do you get a sense of what his priorities are when it comes to Iran? Yeah,
so I think obviously he would prefer a deal, right? If he could have a deal. We also saw this was his preference during his first administration, that at first he on the one hand, he went to the maximum pressure campaign, he left the JCPOA. On the other hand, during the entire period, he was still always offering Iran to try and come to the table out of the hopes that once he pressures them with one hand, he'll be able to negotiate on the other.
The old carrot and stick approach.
Yeah. And I think now we're in a slightly different place. I mean, he still might offer, he still, as we saw, would like to see them come to the table, but I really don't think that at the end of the day, there is a deal to be had between the two sides, because even if the Iranians are willing to come to the table, which at the moment they're not, Trump would insist on a deal that actually did enforce or block Iran's path toward a nuclear weapon, also probably roll back the amount of uranium that it's been enriched, maybe some of the actual capabilities that 15 years ago were considered to be absolutely unacceptable by the UN Security Council and everyone. And Iran will only accept a deal that, you know, somehow allows it to eventually move toward or leaves the door open to taking the next steps to a nuclear weapon. So even if they do agree to some sort of negotiation to come to the table, it will only be a way of sort of dragging things out in order to, you know, move forward on other fronts or hold off, you know, economic sanctions for a period of time. And I really don't see it happening. So given that, given that, I think it's also only a matter of time whether the only thing that really that can really prevent Iran from continuing its step forward, and it's been swiftly moving toward and enriching uranium to higher levels and higher quantities than we've seen in the past at all. Just yesterday, the IAEA issued a report showing that it's continued to enrich to 60%.
It's getting ever closer. Yeah.
No country needs to enrich uranium to 60% if it's only looking for its nuclear energy needs. Right, that should be clear. So the only
especially a country that's not short on oil stocks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the only thing that might actually prevent Iran from trying to take those steps forward is a credible military threat. Right, that's the only thing that historically has showed it's taken into account. Okay. And I would like to add, though, that the only country who is actually willing to, let's put it this way, no one actually wants Iran to be a nuclear Iran. Not in the region, not in the external powers, but the only country who is willing to actually establish a military threat and maybe follow through is Israel.
Once again, do you think it was wise for Israel's foreign minister to make those comments this week that Syria should be a federation and that the area south of Damascus should be demilitarized?
Well, I don't know. You know, I think that's my understanding. What the Syrians would like as well, to have some sort of democratic, moderate government come out of the current state of flux. But I think what's important to understand is what the gentleman here just said. It's not just Israel that is interested in establishing footholds. Israel is, of course, only reacting to the fact that he said outside powers. He means Iran. And for the past 10 years, Turkey as well, but I'm thinking specifically in the southwestern, what they call the triangle, close to the border with Israel. For the past 10 years, Israel has been managing a campaign to prevent Iran from establishing a Hezbollah-like militias and control across from the border of the Golan. And of course, so in the current state of affairs, we need to remember, Syria is formally in a state of war with Israel since the founding of Israel. That hasn't changed. So if the government the previous government has fallen apart, the new one is attempting to consolidate its control, then obviously Israel, the right thing to do is to ensure that its interests and there are no threats established facing it. And I wish Syria the best of luck in rebuilding itself. It seems to be a lot of challenges ahead. Again, everyone would like to see Syria go in the direction of, let's say, the Gulf states or something resembling democracy. But right now, the onus is on the current Syrian regime to show that they have changed their spots. Right, and so maybe that's what they're trying to present. I wish them luck with that, but we cannot expect everyone to just assume that because they changed their appearance and put on a suit that their ideology has changed as well.
All right, Dr. Rafael Ben-Levi from the Misgav Institute, first time on Middle East Now. We appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.